Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Autism Stories. I'm your host, Doug Bletcher, the founder of Autism Personal Coach. Autistic people are the true experts of the autistic experience, and Autism Stories is where we interview autistic people to learn from their diverse stories, experiences, and get their insights. If you would like to be notified about each week's episode of Autism Stories, we suggest you subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform. On today's episode of Autism Stories, David Gunter joins us to discuss disclosing his autism in the workplace and what he is doing to support other autistic people. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation. David, thanks so much for joining me here on Autism Stories.
Oh, absolutely. Happy to be here.
I'd love to start out our conversation by learning, where does your story in the autistic community begin?
I have been autistic my entire life, but I did not figure that out until my early 50s. My whole life, I knew I was different than everybody else. I knew I had trouble doing things that seemed easy for everybody else. I knew everybody else seemed to know things. There are all these rules that everybody else seemed to know that I just didn't. So I knew there was something. I had my first really severe bout of autistic burnout in junior high school because I was different. And in junior high school, different is just the worst thing you could possibly be. So I tried all day not to be different and never quite succeeded at that. So I had severe autistic burnout in junior high school. I was diagnosed as being a moody teenager. Again, in high school and was moody teenager. I thought I was depressed. I sought therapy for depression many times in my adult life. I, like many autistic people, I stim. I tap out things on the tabletop, or I moving my hands comforts me. I'm doing it now. It provides me a sense of calm, provides me a sense of control. Like a lot of autistic people, I sometimes get stuck on a word and I need to say that word a few times. If I can't control my hands and can't control my speech, I must have Tourette's syndrome. So I looked into that for a while, and that wasn't it either. Thought I had a social anxiety for a while. Thought I had social phobia I thought I had a lot of things. And it was just by chance. I was meeting a new therapist when I was about 50. And again, for depression, because that's what I thought it was. And by chance, he had done some work with autistic children as he was going through his training. And he gently brought up the idea that, another thing that would explain a lot of what you're talking about is autism. And I didn't want to hear it. I had thought about autism in grad school in my mid-20s, but I bought into the Hollywood stereotype of what autism is. Autism means you act like Rain Man, and I'm not Rain Man, so I'm not autistic. There you go, QED. So he suggested that I might consider autism, and I was a little insulted by that because that's not who I am. I'm not one of those people. And it took at least a year for me to read more, to learn more about what autism is, and to start to realize, that's me. That's who I am. Like I said, it took me over a year to sort of process that and accept the fact that it's who I am. I did eventually go for a formal diagnosis because I was in a situation where I needed a piece of paper with the word autism on it and a doctor's signature. So I did go through that process. Turns out I'm also ADHD. Did not see that coming, but it does explain a lot. So, my journey, it's hard for me to talk about my journey because a lot of the time I didn't know I was on this journey. It's been a lot of looking back and saying, oh, well, that makes sense. That's why I did that. That's why I couldn't do that. So it's been an interesting trip.
You work as a medical writer, and for the first 3 years of your current job, you didn't disclose your autism, but that's changed in the last year. How did you go about this disclosure, and what have been the results of this?
I have tried a few approaches. At some jobs, I had one job where I went in on day one and sat down with the head of HR and said, I'm autistic and this is what I needed. And that turned out to be a horrible mistake. She had no idea what autism was, could not get me out of her office fast enough. I don't know if she thought I was dangerous or contagious or what, but she could not show me the door fast enough. Did not last long at that job, shockingly. And this was years ago. Through experiences like that, I've lost jobs because of my autistic tendencies. The CEO of the company stood up at the annual meeting and said, I have an open door policy and I want to hear from you. And if you've got a solution to a problem, come talk to me and we'll work on it. And what he meant was never, never, never speak to me, you horrible peasant. But I didn't hear that. I heard I have an open door policy. Come talk to me. So lost that job. So I had sort of learned to keep my autism to myself because bad things happen when people find out about it. I got into a situation where my father had been ill for quite a while and he finally passed away, and just the stress and the demands of helping him and going through all of that, it was too much. I burned out completely and couldn't keep the mask on at work anymore. Didn't have the energy for that. Got criticized for being confrontational and not being a team player and all those sorts of things. And I finally had to say, look, here's what's going on. This is the full story. So I didn't disclose because I wanted to. I disclosed because I kind of felt like I had to try to hang on to that job. And then I thought, well, everybody knows now. I may as well talk about it. I may as well control the story. I may as well be the one who lays out the facts here. So I started out on LinkedIn, making some posts there, trying to find my voice, trying to figure out what does this mean to be someone who stands up and talks about their autism. Chose it for a couple of reasons, partly because I had an account there from 10 years before when I was looking for a job, partly because I knew some people at work followed me on LinkedIn. So it was a way for me to, if I could talk about autism on LinkedIn, some of them would see it. Maybe they'll start a conversation at work. I don't have to knock on people's doors and say, hi, I'm autistic. Let's talk about that. It has been an interesting process. There is, my job requires a lot of skills that play to my autistic strengths. I'm very good at my job. My communication style does not work well all the time with other people. But as I've opened up more and talked about it more, I've been very surprised at how receptive people have been, the changes people are willing to make. There are always exceptions, but overall, I've been surprised at how positive it's been.
When I think about disclosure, that's one aspect of communication. And for us as autistic people, communication in the workplace can be very challenging. What do you think's helpful for people to know about you in order to best communicate with you in the workplace?
Well, when we're talking about disclosure, to me, there's disclosure with a capital D, the formal standing up and saying, hi, I'm autistic, and asking for an accommodation with a capital A, something under the Americans with Disabilities Act or something formal. What works for many people, what I suggest for many people, is disclosure with a small d, asking for an accommodation with a small a. You can go to your boss and say, hey, it would help me out if you would give me some clear detailed instructions on what you want so I can give you what you want, and present that in a way that, hey, this doesn't cost you anything and it's going to get you what you want the first time and save us all a bunch of time. And you can do that without ever saying the word autistic or accommodation or whatever. And so for a lot of people, that's the right starting point. I do need clear instructions. If I send a document out for review and someone says, well, you might want to think about changing this, I don't know what to do with that information. But I might want to think about changing this in some way you haven't described for some reason I don't understand. That I can't do anything with that information. But if you lay it out for me in detail, here is my concern, here are some alternatives. Okay, now we can talk. Asking people for that kind of detail is important. People who are not autistic love to ask questions that are not questions. They'll say, "Can you do this?" And I hear a question: "Can you do this? Are you able to do this?" They mean it as a statement, "You will do this right now." I've learned that one through years of trial and error. But a lot of times, non-autistic people will say things they don't mean and mean what they don't say. And so, trying to convince people, just be literal with me. If you need me to do something, say you need me to do it. Don't try to sugarcoat it and camouflage it and make it all nice and pretty. Just tell me this is what you need, and yeah, I'll do that. So those are the two big ones for me. I guess the third one would be people just know things, and I don't fully understand how non-autistic people do that, but they just know what the rules of the game are. They know that you're just never supposed to do that, or you're always supposed to do something else. And I don't know those things. So when someone says to me, "Well, why did you do that?" Everybody knows you don't do that. Not everybody. So trying to ask people, before you say everybody knows that, take a second and think, does everybody know that? And how does everybody know that? Because I don't know that. So a lot of it comes down to getting people to say what they mean. As an autistic person, like many autistic people, I communicate in a very literal way. What I say is what I mean. And despite all the evidence to the contrary, I just assume everybody does that. But that they just don't.
The question, can you do this, is such an interesting one, because when I'm asked that, I can answer it in a way of, yes, I am capable of doing that. But
Yes.
if I do this thing, there's going to be some negative consequences for me down the road, and it won't be very far down the road.
All right.
My energy is going to be depleted. I might get overwhelmed, and then other things you might want me to do may not happen today.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times, that someone asks, "Can you do this?" I'm not sure what this is. Can you take a look at this and let me know what you think? How deep an analysis do you want? How do you want me to communicate it back to you? When do you want me to communicate it back to you? So inevitably, I come with the follow-up questions. When you say, "Take a look at this," what does that mean? And inevitably, that gets seen as disrespectful or trying to get out of doing the job or whatever. And so the person gets irritated and they snap, "Well, can you do this or not?" And I get irritated because I don't know if I can do it because you haven't told me what it is yet. So, and then it spirals. I've been caught in that spiral many times. Can you do this? Well, I can get up out of my chair and walk 100 miles. I'd really rather not. Um, Not sure I could do it today. As you say, bad things are going to happen if I try right now. Can I? Or somebody's life depended on it? I suppose I could, but I really don't want to. There's got to be another alternative. Can I take my car? Can I call somebody? So it's, I hate can you just drives me insane.
Now, there are many talented autistic writers out there, so I'm wondering what might be some important things for them to consider if they're thinking that medical writing could be a good path for them.
Oh, medical writing is, it's a very specialized form of writing. I work for one of the big drug companies. I work for the part of the company that tests potential treatments for cancer. So when my company tests one of these drugs, has a clinical trial to see if this drug will work, those studies can last for years. They take place in many different countries simultaneously. There may be hundreds of people involved. So when it's all over, they're left with literally thousands of pages of charts and graphs and reports. And it's my job as the medical writer to dive into that ocean of information and find the story, find what happened. Did the drug work or not? Was it safe or not? What happened to the people who took the drug? It's a job that plays to my strengths, as I mentioned earlier. I get to work from home, which is huge for autistic people in particular and neurodivergent people in general. I've got complete control over my environment, the lighting, the intensity of the light. Is it the hotter, warmer yellow light or the cooler blue light? I've got my noise canceling headphones. I've got my toys to play with. I've got everything exactly how I want it, which makes my life so much better. But in addition to working from home, diving into that ocean of information and finding the story takes tremendous focus, which I'm good at. It takes tremendous analytical skills, which I'm good at. It takes, a commitment to finding the truth. Of course, the company wants to say this is brilliant, but is it brilliant? Do we have the evidence to back up the statement this is brilliant? So, and that need for social justice, that need for objective truth that I have fits well with this job. So there's a lot of aspects of who I am that make me really good at my job, and it's a really tough job. And so, I would broaden your question out a little bit, sort of beyond medical writing in particular. There are a lot of analyst jobs out there in the world, scientific analysts, lots of people have mountains of information that they don't know what to do with. And autistic people like me, we're the problem solvers. We will find the key in that big pile of, I'm running out of metaphors. We'll dive into that haystack and find the needle. We'll figure out what the story is from all the information. So that's one of the things I'd like to get across as I continue to talk about autism is, there are challenges, there are difficulties, there are things that I cannot do easily, there are things that I don't do well, but there are also strengths. Given the opportunity, if you let me employ those strengths in an environment that supports me, I can do cool stuff. I can do great stuff. And I'm not saying I have superpowers or whatever. I'm just saying I've got the skills for an analysis job that a lot of people don't have. And I wish that's one of the big things I'd like to get out to the world is, yeah, autism is a challenge. Yeah, it's hard a lot of days, but it also lets me do things that I really enjoy, and it lets me be good at them.
I think for a lot of us as autistic people, we're looking to support other autistics. So thinking about that, I read where you said you're trying to find ways to be a better advocate for people like you. So I'm curious, what better ways have you found so far that work for you?
Well, I'm still early on the path. It's only been about 9 months ago that I posted my first item on LinkedIn that said, yes, I am autistic. I had reposted some other autism content before that, but it was March of this year, about 9 months ago, when I first stood up and said, yeah, this is me. The reason I'm reposting all this autism content is because. So I'm still figuring a lot of it out. I think it can happen in a lot of ways, big and small. One of the people who inspired me to get more vocal is a woman that I work with. She was at a meeting making a point about something. I've forgotten what exactly. But as she's talking, da 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 da, and I'm autistic, so da 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 da, and she just kept going. And to me, that was like a magic trick. How do you do that? How do you just say I'm autistic out loud in a meeting at work, and act like it's nothing? Okay, she did that. Maybe I could do that. Maybe I could say I'm autistic out loud at a meeting at work. So I'm finding that as I stand up and talk about autism, a lot of people at work are reaching out to me discreetly saying, hey, I don't want anybody to know this, but what should I do here? What should I do there? So just being visible, as simple as that sounds, can be big. Just to have someone who bumps into you once or interacts with you once, who sees you being visible and says, okay, no, all right, I'm not alone. There are more of us out here. I'm trying to be visible. I'm also trying to break down a lot of the stereotypes, as I mentioned earlier. Yes, 30% of autistic people are nonverbal or minimally verbal, a functional vocabulary of 30 words or fewer. Doesn't mean they can't think or dream or create. It just means they don't talk. So 30% of the people fall into that category. 15% fall into the hyperlexic category. That kid who starts reading really early and reads at a grade level way beyond his age and has a huge vocabulary compared to his peers. There's an 84% chance, statistically speaking, there's an 84% chance that kid's autistic. And that kid was me. I was the kid who read all the time. So autism doesn't look like any one thing. And that's one of the mantras I keep coming back to when I do talk to groups is autism is complicated. It can look like a lot of different things. It doesn't fit neatly into a box. And another point that I try to hit is that a lot of my needs are not special. I don't really have a lot of special needs. I need clear communication at work, but guess what? So does everybody else. I just need it a little more intensely. The consequences are a little more intense if I don't get it. But everybody could use some clear communication at work. I need time to focus on what's important if I'm going to do a really good job at it. Diving into the data, for example, I can't do that if there's a lot of distractions and people are asking me questions. So I need that time to focus, and so does everybody else. I need it a little more. The consequences are a little more severe if I don't get it, but it's not a special need. It's just a variation on a human need. So trying to talk to people about, the realities of what autism is, if we could, Rain Man, in its day, it was groundbreaking. An autistic main character in a major movie played by a major actor, played in a sympathetic way that we saw he was really a human being. That was huge back in 1980, whatever. But that's not all autistic people look like that. Hollywood is so full of remakes and sequels and imitations, but nobody stepped up to say, okay, I'm also going to make a movie about an autistic person who's sympathetic and a real human being. So that was the one example that people got, and people have really latched on to that. If I can just say, no, we're bigger than that. There's more to us than that. How to do that is what I'm kind of struggling with. I'm speaking out at work more. I've been given a chance to make some presentations at work. I have been on a couple of podcasts, so here with you today. I am a complete dinosaur when it comes to social media. At the moment, I post on LinkedIn, and that's pretty much it. One of my goals for early next year is to broaden that out a little bit, figure out how to do some short videos and see if I can post those around. I'm still trying to figure out the how. How do I know what I want to say. I know what people need to hear. I'm just not entirely sure how to get that information out in front of them. Very long answer to a very simple question. How am I trying to be an advocate in every way I can think of? I'm just not sure what that looks like quite yet.
In addition to being a medical writer, you're a board member of the Autistic Voiceover Artists, whose mission's to empower autistic adults in the voiceover industry. What's your role and or responsibilities as board member to help the Autistic Voiceover Artists mission come to life?
Well, the organization, Autistic Voiceover Artists, autisticvoiceoverartist.org, I'll throw in a plug. There are a lot of people in the autistic community who have an interest in and who have a career in the voiceover industry. And that's everything from video games to cartoons to press one to talk to a doctor to, welcome to the airport. All these voices you hear all day long, somebody recorded all of those. A lot of autistic people are drawn to that work. You're given a script, you know exactly what you need to say. You get to sit in a quiet, dark room and say it. So it's communicating. If you're playing a fictional character, you get to be angry, you get to be happy, you get to be all those things, and no one's going to tell you stop doing that, stop being happy. So there is a tremendous freedom in it that a lot of autistic people seek out, and so the organization is geared toward, if you're autistic or have another form of neurodivergence. We don't check anybody's ID at the door. We don't need to see a note from your doctor that says you're autistic. If you are autistic and you have an interest in learning about doing voiceover work as a hobby, as a side gig, as a career, whatever, you can come to this organization. There are classes online, live and recorded classes about the mechanics of the voiceover industry, from what equipment to buy to how to get your name out there to how to actually do the job, how to actually do, speak or present a character in a way that will get you hired, get you a job. There's also a library of support resources just for autistic people in general. Putting yourself out there and looking for a job is hard for people who don't like talking to strangers, and getting rejected from a job is hard from people who are, rejection sensitive to dysphoria or, more get beat down a lot and burned out a lot. So it's a really great community that I'm happy to be part of. We've only just gotten started. We've only had a few free classes so far, and I'm already seeing people in the classes take care of each other, support each other, encourage each other. My role, I know absolutely nothing about being a voiceover artist, but there are a few of us on the board who are autistic, and it's our job to make sure that the needs of the autistic people are represented. So, and I take that very seriously because there's a lot of organizations out there that talk about helping autistic people, that talk about autism in one way or another. And nobody in charge has any idea what autism is. They've read lots of books or not. And they think they know what they're talking about, but having that authenticity of someone who actually is autistic to say, no, that's not how you reach out to an autistic audience. No, that will send us running, screaming in the opposite direction, is huge for me. So it's something I'm really happy to be a part of, and it's something I'm really looking forward to seeing it grow.
And David, how can our listeners learn about you beyond this interview?
The best way is my personal website, which is planetautism.net. Very important you put the .net on the end. Somebody else owns planetautism.com. And it tends to be not safe for work content and malware and gambling scams. So you don't want to go there. Planetautism.net is my site. I've got links there to my LinkedIn profile, the podcasts that I've done. I've got a blog there. I have both autism and ADHD. So my autism makes grand plans and structure for this is how the website should be. And then my ADHD kicks the castle over and says, no, let's do this instead. So it's constantly under revision. It's constantly a work in progress, but that's also who I am. So your best bet would be to go to planetautism.net. You can follow me on LinkedIn. I'm always willing to take a connection request on LinkedIn. I talk to individuals there or just follow my posts. I want to be accessible. I want to help people who need help. I spent a lot of years alone, beating myself up for why can't I be like everybody else? What's wrong with me? Like many autistic people, I came to the edge of ending my life because there's something horribly wrong with me and I'm not getting any better and I'm not having a good time. So why am I sticking around? I want to find those people and say, no, you're not alone and you're not broken and you're not defective. Your brain works a little differently. There's some different rules that apply to you, but come over here and I'll talk you through what some of those rules are and we'll get you sorted out. So I just want anybody to feel free to, follow me, talk to me. If I can spare one person, even a day of that kind of depression and self-loathing that I went through for so long for just not being right, that would make me very, very happy.
Well, David, I really enjoyed getting to know you today. Thanks so much for this conversation and for joining me here on Autism Stories.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much to David for the conversation. To learn more about David, please check out the link in the podcast description for this episode. We always love hearing from you and would especially love to hear from you relating to this episode, how you advocate for yourself and other autistics. Did you know Autism Personal Coach provides neurodiversity affirming support by autistics for autistics? We empower autistic adults and teens to lead self directed, purpose driven lives through our customized life coaching and community groups. So please join us today to experience judgment free coaching rooted in empathy, expertise, and respect for autistic identity. Until next time, I'm Doug Bletcher of Autism Personal Coach. Talk to you then.